Welcome everybody to the American Brain Coalition. That's the ABC's 2023 Educational Series webinar today on ARPA-H. I'm Matt Rizzo. I'm the board chair of the American Brain Coalition, the Reynolds Professor and Chair in the Department of Neurological Sciences here in Omaha at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, where we're a proud member of the ABC. So thanks for joining us today, members and also non-members. You may know that the ABC is a nonprofit umbrella organization. We have 150 of the leading patient advocacy and volunteer health organizations, along with professional neurological, psychological, and psychiatric associations, publicly traded corporations that are actively engaged in brain research, and brain-concerned federal agencies like NIH and key institutes like neurological disorders and stroke, aging, mental health, the FDA and others. What this all means is we're in a really unique position to engage a broad spectrum of stakeholders, all interested in working together to advance knowledge, understanding, and care and cures for brain disorders, which are affecting over 100 million Americans and their families. It's a problem we can't ignore. So you might ask, how is it that 100 million neurons and 100 more non-neuron cells with 10,000 connections per neuron, how do they form brain circuits and systems that are generating thoughts and behavior and even society? And then how do we regenerate and replace and integrate these elements as they wither and they die in terrible brain disorders like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and ALS? How do we preserve? How do we extract human consciousness? Can we put it on computer chips to hold individual experience? There are lots of moonshots here, technically and socially. And that's where the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Help, ARPA-H, which we're talking about today, comes in. By now, most of you have probably heard about this agency, proposed and promoted by President Biden to improve our government's ability to speed biomedical solutions and health solutions. This was created in line with other ARPA mechanisms to transform research and development to drive transformative health solutions for all. But what does it mean exactly? What exactly does ARPA-H do? We're going to be hearing about that today. We're thrilled to collaborate with ARPA-H. I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Mark Resnick, who's the ABC Vice Chair, to introduce our special guest. Mark, take it away.
As Dr. Rizzo stated, I'm the ABC Vice Chair, and I'm also a Distinguished Professor of Physiology, Biophysics, and Psychiatry at the University of Illinois College of Medicine. And in addition to that, I am a research career scientist at the Jesse Brown VA Medical Center. So I'm really excited to introduce our special guest today. This is Dr. David Bowen, and he is the senior advisor at ARPA-H. So he works alongside Renee Wiggerson, who is the founding director of ARPA-H and was just appointed by President Biden in October of 2022. David is a neuroscientist. He received his PhD at UCSF. Prior to joining ARPA-H in January of this year, David had multiple healthcare roles, including Deputy Director of Global Health Policy for the Gates Foundation and the Health Staff Director for the United States Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, a health subcommittee throughout the Bush and Obama administrations. So now it's time to inject a personal note. David and I have known each other for very close to 25 years. David was a AAAS Science Policy Fellow when I was a Robert Wood Johnson Policy Fellow, and we shared a tiny office along with 4 others while working on the Health Committee staff of the late Senator Ted Kennedy. I returned to Chicago, but David stayed on, eventually becoming staff director, and as you just heard, has had an illustrious and interesting career since that time. So now it's time to turn it over to David, and he's going to tell us about ARPA-H, explain what it is, and tell us what we can do to get involved. David.
Thank you so very, very much. Thank you to the ABC. Thank you to Dr. Rizzo. It's really a pleasure to be here. And it's a special pleasure to, I was going to say share a room, but share a screen with Mark. As he alluded to, we shared an office that had the approximate dimensions of a chicken coop with the four of us. And in that little chicken coop, we dealt with everything from cancer to coverage to quality to FDA and everything in between. It was an enormously heady and exciting time. Apologies for my phone in the background. And it's really a pleasure to be here. At ARPA-H, as I'll explain in a few slides, we concentrate on a very broad range of health priorities. But I, just speaking purely personally, I still have a special attraction to the brain. I am astonished that even now it is the most complex organization of matter known to humanity. And we still are just scratching the surface of our understanding of what it does and how it does it. So it's a great pleasure, and how to repair it. It's a great pleasure to be here. And let me just give an overview of what I'll be doing over the next little while. And the most important thing that I'll say is I'm not going to be talking at great length. What I want to do is give you a few slides that provide an overview of ARPA-H. They're really designed to be conversation starters. And then there'll be a lot of opportunity to have discussion and further elaboration of any of the points that I provide. So with that, let me attempt to share my screen. I'll ask Dr. Rizzo and Mark, are you seeing the cover slide?
Yes.
Yes.
I
Okay.
can see it.
Great. So again, thank you very much. And I'm going to start with the most important thing, which is the goal, the base, the mission. And that mission is to accelerate better health outcomes for everyone. And there is a reason that the for everyone is highlighted, that there is a strong emphasis, as you will see, pulled through throughout this presentation and throughout the framework under which ARPA-H operates, about having the developments and the breakthroughs that ARPA-H comes up with be available and accessible for everyone. So, as was alluded to, this all began with President Biden's vision. This is almost now a year ago, just over a year ago. And you can read the quote, but I think it really derives from a sense that, Mark and my former boss shared, of this sense of that America can really do anything if it puts its mind to it. And I think that's a tremendously exciting and optimistic vision of the country. And one of the things that America should put its mind to is creating new breakthroughs in health. And that's what ARPA-H is all about. So structurally, ARPA-H is part of NIH, but it's not an institute or center. It operates differently than the institutes and centers. The ARPA-H director, Dr. Wagerson, reports directly to the HHS secretary. And within ARPA-H, there are program managers, of whom much more later, and business team members who are doing a lot of the rest of the work of steering the agency. So there are a number of features that ARPA-H has that are unusual, listed on the right. My goal is not to go through all of them, but rather to just give the overall sense that they are designed to create a more nimble, more flexible, more quick-acting agency that's able to act much more like a business than is traditionally the case. So there are flexibilities in terms of purchasing, there are flexibilities in terms of hiring, and so on. And you'll see how all of this kind of pulls through. ARPA-H exists within a health ecosystem. All of us are part of that. And we could all list a number of different orbits beyond the ones just listed here, but we work with federal partners, we work with NGOs, we work with academic centers, industry, healthcare providers, and patient groups. And all of this is ultimately designed to be to the benefit of patients, or to be to the benefit of people to help them stop being patients, to prevent them from becoming patients. And I also just want to point out that the icon in the middle is an H, not a B. It's ARPA-H, not ARPA-B. We are about the totality of health, biotech and biology and medicine and related disciplines are all part of that, but the goal is to focus on the totality of health. To that end, there are 4 initial mission areas, mission offices, each headed by a mission office director. Health science futures to expand what's possible. Scalable solutions, it's important to reach everyone. Proactive health, that's what I mentioned before about this is for patients and for people to help keep them from being patients. And resilient systems, how do we build integrated healthcare systems that can serve the need? All of the work is informed by an analytic and framework for action called the eilmeier questions, after an original director or an early director of DARPA, which was the kind of original model for the ARPAs that have followed. And the first 8 of those are inherited. And I'll just kind of tick through a few of them briefly, but they're all designed on the idea that a great idea is usually fairly simple to explain. What are you trying to do? Why should people care? What difference will it make? How long will it take? Is it feasible? All of these are designed to crystallize the thinking around things that are going to make a difference and that are going to really push the boundaries while still having a reasonable shot at feasibility. But there are also 2 additional questions that ARPA-H has added for itself. And these reflect some of the themes that I mentioned before. Number 9, to ensure equitable access for all people, how will cost, accessibility, and user experience be addressed? So I think it's really worth dwelling on that just for a moment, because what that says is that these issues of cost and accessibility are as fundamental as any of the other questions. And then number 10, since we've all seen the effects of misperception and misuse of science, the 10th question is designed to address that with the idea that it's really important to identify possible misuse and possible misperception early so that we can prevent that or mitigate it rather than discover it as a surprise at the end. So I mentioned the program managers. They are really at the core of the ARPA model. This slide shows them as a flywheel. I actually like the metaphor of a relay race. So with the exception of the first group of program managers who will come into essentially an empty room, all subsequent program managers will be in a relay race. They will come in and they will receive the baton in terms of programs that are ongoing from their predecessors. They will try and complete those. They will initiate programs of their own and try and complete those. And they will initiate some programs that they will not complete before they depart, and they will hand those off to their successors. And so the idea here is to have people come in, bright, driven, passionate people come in for a relatively short period of time. Program managers have an initial 3-year appointment with the potential of 1 renewal. So the design is to get smart people in, get them to put all of their energy and their creativity towards successful programs, and then cycle them out so that other people can contribute their ideas to ARPA. So these are the kind of organizational attributes that underlie all of this. As I mentioned, term limits, it's a projects agency, not a career. There's a considerable amount of autonomy given to program managers. They have the responsibility with support and with some consultation to develop and drive programs. We're seeking radical change. And this idea of facilitating the future, creating the future, is really the nucleus of the organization. So what is a program manager? Well, in one of my early days at ARPA, I was brought in by some of my colleagues who worked much more in the public sector than in the private sector. And I mentioned that ARPA has some unusual authorities. One of them is to be able to work with private sector recruiters. And I was brought in to kind of give some advice on how to frame a request to a private sector recruiter to try and help find program managers. And by the way, my not so hidden agenda as part of this presentation is to really spur thinking among this group and among your colleagues about people you know who might be a program manager. So anyway, my colleagues came to me and said, well, how do we frame a request to a recruiter? And there was a lot of talk about the character elements of program managers. drive and willingness to take risks and so on, which are crucial. And I had to smile because I said, well, when you work with recruiters, they're used to getting a request that, is of the form like, we need a senior vice president in research in neurology, and they sort of know what that looks like. They're going to ask, well, is a program manager early career, mid-career, late career? The answer is yes, they can be any of those. Is it neurology, immunology, psychology, oncology? Yes, could be any of those. The crucial thing, and ARPA is not disease limited or specialty limited. The crucial thing is to come in with an idea that works, and we'll get to more of what that looks like in a moment, that answers the Eilmeier questions or the ARPA-Eilmeier questions, and that can be carried out and will make a real advance. So what does a program look like? As I mentioned, it begins with a program manager who identifies a challenge. And if that challenge is easily solvable with current activities or current approaches, it's probably not one for ARPA. There's a phrase in the sort of DARPA world that something has to be ARPA hard. And that's really the criterion. Is this something that would not, much less likely to get done unless ARPA does it or supports it? If that gate is gone through, then a program is launched. The program manager launches the program and becomes the CEO of that program, and then enlists and recruits performers, which is the term of art for people who actually carry out the business of the program. Those performers, again, in the sort of all of the above theme, they could be academia, they could be individual experts, they could be advocacy groups, they could be companies. It will really depend on the specifics of the program. Programs will have a life cycle. They're designed, as I mentioned, these challenges, program manager designs them. They build a performer team. They go out into the marketplace of ideas and capabilities and find the right mix of those skills to be the performer team. These next two I'm going to mention now, and then we'll see more on the coming slides on these. They execute and measure. So in much the same way as a business, we look at what's going on, what's moving forward, what's optimal, what's less optimal. We learn and grow and reallocate resources accordingly. And then crucially, commercialize and transition. So let me dive into those thoughts in a bit more detail. The ARPA model, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's unlike an NIH institute or center. ICs typically give grants. They give other mechanisms as well, but they also give a substantial amount of grants. ARPA-H will almost exclusively or exclusively provide contracts or cooperative agreements. These are funding mechanisms designed to create a particular or designed to reach a particular objective. And so that objective will be intrinsically unknown at this, or the objective will be known, but the best way to reach it will be unknown at the time that these programs are started. And so what may happen is that approaches A, B, and C are initially funded. It looks like C is not really the best way after a year or so, and then after another year, it looks like A may be not the best way. Those contracts will be ended and the resources reallocated. And this is not a negative toward any of the people carrying on approach A or C. It's just a recognition that what we're trying to do is find the best way to a solution. And as you're venturing into the unknown, it's of course intrinsically impossible to know which one that will be, but they'll be evaluated and they'll be shaped. And the ultimate goal is graduation. It's certainly true that ARPA projects may produce presentations and papers and fundamental understanding, but the ultimate goal is graduation. And graduation is solving the challenge and moving the solution out, as Renee says, into the wild, to the people who need it, who will benefit from it. And that's working with partners who can bring these advances to scale. And there's in fact a whole office set up that is unique to ARPA-H that is designed to facilitate this kind of transition, this kind of graduation. This is my last slide, and I'm really delighted to be able to show this slide because before about a week ago, we had to just hint at it, and now this is actually all out in the open. All of this is on the ARPA-H website. And there are three things that we announced on March 15th. One, a BAA announcement, two, a site selection process, and three, the ARPA-H dash. So let me deal with each of those sort of in sequence. The BAA, broad agency announcement, is, as the name implies, a broad agency announcement about the availability of funding. And in fact, if you go to the website, there are mechanisms if you're interested in submitting. We're having a proposers day where people can get more in-depth information on this BAA, but it is a call for really proposals within those four mission areas that I identified. Those mission areas are deliberately broad, they're somewhat overlapping, and they're designed to really stretch across the waterfront of health advances. And so if you're interested, and I hope you are, in submitting a proposal, there's much more detail on the website. Similarly, Congress has required that ARPA-H have offices in three geographically distinct areas. There's a process also that we unveiled on the 15th to select those sites. And those sites are not, some people may think of ARPA-H offices as sort of gleaming research towers. We will not have an intramural research program. They will be, we're going on a hub and spoke model where we'll have hubs that serve particular needs, but then there will be spokes from those hubs that will stretch into multiple areas of the country and multiple disciplines and capabilities. Again, there are many more details on the website. And then finally, and I love this one, there is the ARPA-H dash, which I think actually kicks off today. And it is a competition to come up with really breakthrough, innovative, novel ideas in a quick way. And what we've done in a format that obviously has nothing to do with any athletic competition that may be going on in March, because that's all trademarked. But we'll have 64 ideas, and they will go to 32, and then 16, and then 8, and then 4, and then ultimately a winner. And that winner will get a prize, a cash prize, and we'll also get what we hope will be the recognition and the benefit of being the ARPA-H initial dash awardee. And it's a really low barrier to entry. The descriptions are brief. The process is quick. The applications are open now for only a couple of weeks, but it's designed to be quick and impactful and also fun. So that was my goal of only speaking for a little while. I wanted to give you a tour of the waterfront, and I wanted to make sure that we had lots of time for questions. So I'll just end with this slide, which I think is another piece of inspiration, that everything that we do now used to be unimaginable at one point. My speaking to you on a screen through our computers used to be unimaginable. So many of the things that we've all seen in terms of clinical practice in neuroscience and other disciplines used to be unimaginable, barely imaginable. And what's needed is the drive, the initiative, the talent, and the support needed to make the unimaginable practical. And that's what we hope that ARPA-H can play a role in bringing about. So with that, I will unshare, and hopefully there are questions and comments.
Thanks very much. I think I want to let you know that one of the listeners today sent me a private message that this is one of the coolest things they've ever heard. So congratulations on that. I think there are a lot of people on the Zoom today who have big ideas, big ambitions, important diseases to sort of defeat and conquer. And there are also systems level issues, like, for example, how do hospitals work better with universities? So it sounds like everything is game. We do have a specific question from John Hahn, and it's that I recently watched a presentation on CPATH. Is there any connection or relationship with them?
Yeah, on the theory that healthcare policy is a small world. I mean, I remember working on CPATH when I was on the Hill, and I'm delighted to see that it's an initiative. As I mentioned, if you recall that kind of orbit slide where there's a whole range of healthcare stakeholders and partners, I would put CPATH along with institutes like the Reagan-Udall as one of our potential partners and one of the people that one of the groups that we work with. I think there are lots of different potential partners with the goal of making sure that advances get from the lab to patients as quickly as possible. And we welcome good ideas from everywhere, and CPATH could certainly be a source of good ideas.
Thanks, Dr. Bowen. So you mentioned March Madness with ARPA-H and the competition, and there also is on the Ides of March, I guess March 15th, there was a competition that opened for 3 distinct geographic potential locations for ARPA offices. And you did mention a little bit about that. The information is available on a website, but for folks on the Zoom today, any more details on, is it too late for them to apply, and what are you looking for in a geographic site?
We're hopeful that our Ides of March event has a better outcome than the original. But yes, it was the Ides of March, and that process is still ongoing. There are criteria, as I have learned that I need to be mindful of procurement rules, and I have not worked with a federal agency before. I worked on the Hill side. So I'm going to defer a lot of the questions and the responses on that to the people who are running that particular review. But there have been interactive informational sessions, and I think probably the best thing to do is to just visit that website and learn those processes from there.
We have another question that came in.
Please go. You moderate, Mark, please.
Handing off a project to scale up, implement / maintain could require government, community, business partnerships. How does ARPA-H facilitate that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer, there's a common theme of it can vary by program, but I think there will be some common elements. And I think one of the things that was done early on by ARPA-H that I think is really thoughtful is to create this project transition office, which has the acronym PATIO, that is really designed to try and facilitate that graduation and facilitate that dissemination of ARPA-H breakthroughs into the world. And they are working on creating a set of capabilities and a set of partnerships that can help facilitate that. And those are going to be pretty broad. As we start seeing the programs themselves get underway, it will probably be more easy to shape those. But the overall goal is to create the resources that are needed, partnerships with groups, partnerships with companies, partnerships with, I don't know, it could be health systems, it could be fill in the blank here, but whatever is needed for a particular program to try and move that development into a position where it can be easily used and broadly successful.
Great. Also, someone's nibbling on your bait and they wanted to know, how do they become an ARPA program manager?
Well, actually, if we can unshare, Katie, if you wouldn't mind unsharing your screen, I think I have a backup slide on exactly that. I'm glad you asked. So this is everything you always wanted to know about becoming a program manager. So this is the detailed process for becoming a program manager. Some of the things are pretty standard to any kind of job application, but others are specific to ARPA-H. One is to talk to ARPA about the candidate and the concept. And this all goes toward making a pitch and a job talk, which really identifies an idea or ideas that the candidate wishes to pursue. And that's really the core of it. Is this a program that is ARPable? Is it ARPA hard? Is it the right thing for ARPA to do based on the eilmeier questions, based on the kind of the challenge model that I identified before? And then is the candidate the right person to pursue that? And all of that is kind of on the white on blue side. The black on white side is details some of the things that ARPA can do to make working as a program manager attractive for the right candidate. It's a competitive salary. One of the things that I mentioned is that ARPA is not bound by the usual federal salary scales and can offer a competitive salary. There's not going to be a need to relocate. That we all manage groups that are dispersed, and we believe the program managers can do that as well. And also the program manager is not flying completely solo. Well, while it is going to be important for that program manager as CEO of their program to have the capability to kind of see it through and to assemble a team and to make technical progress, there will be support given to that program manager to enhance their skills or supplement them in areas that they're less familiar with. So there's really a strong drive to make sure that the person succeeds. Does that get at the question? I hope.
I hope so.
But apply away.
All right. Matt, if you don't mind indulging me for a second, I'm still trying to understand what a program would be. I mean, would it be clustered under a theme like neuroscience? Would it be, developing more facile diagnostics for any kind of disease? Would it be, so yeah, would it be a theme like that, or would it be a discipline, or would it be a more broad theme?
It's somewhat hard for me to answer this because we don't have ARPA-H programs yet. I have seen some job talks from people who've come in with their ideas, and while I obviously can't talk about the specifics of those while they're under consideration, they've been quite varied. Ones that I've seen have involved one involved a really interesting and novel way of doing kind of in vivo imaging that really around surgery that could have implications for all kinds of different surgery if successful. Another had a really interesting way of potentially controlling cell function in vivo, which again could have broad implications. One was much more about a novel way to economically incentivize kind of health-seeking behavior, or health-preserving behavior. So, that really is a tour of the waterfront. I mean, when I was looking into joining ARPA-H, I looked into the other ARPAs and the kinds of things that they have funded. And, DARPA is really well known for the things that it's funded. But I looked into ARPA-E, ARPA Energy, which I found fascinating because I don't know much about energy. And one of the programs that I found that they were funding, and maybe this is a concrete example, but in a different field. So it turns out that energy turbines are more effective the hotter they run. But if you run them too hot, the materials that make up turbine blades melt or deform. So one of the ARPA-E projects is to try and figure out an economically viable, more heat resistant material for turbine blades. Which, if it were successful, would enable most turbines to run hotter and more efficiently, making more efficient energy uses, effectively giving us more energy reserves. So that, to me, when I thought about ARPA-H, I tried to think about analogs of that in the health space. Could we create something that is broadly applicable to a range of things that we deal with in health and medicine? And what's exciting about the ARPA-H mission is that the fill in the blanks of that are both really exciting and really limitless. What they will turn out to be, I don't know.
Okay.
I see there's another question. How does ARPA-H intend to include patient perspectives? So this question has come up a lot in the discussions that I've had with patient groups and other advocacy groups. Again, I'm still learning about the ARPA model. And what I have learned, though, is that programs are, really entities that as I mentioned before, there's a great deal of autonomy given to the program managers. What I've been told is that program managers can have advisory committees to help shed light or give advice or give thoughts on the programs that they're conducting, and that ARPA-H may have such program advisory committees on a program by program basis.
Thank you, David. May I ask a question? I'm not sure I see another one in the chat or the Q&A right now, but it's that how do you see ARPA-H's mission intersecting with that of other sort of highly innovative programs like the BRAIN Initiative, with whom the ABC is quite familiar? How will you synergize with them? They're doing great work as well.
Yeah, so I think the key word here is additive, that ARPA-H wants to be additive to the existing health research and R&D ecosystem, not to replace or duplicate things that are already happening, but rather to try and provide, as you rightly said, that synergy with initiatives that are already ongoing. And there are, incredible initiatives ongoing we're talking to one that's coming up in cancer, and there's in neurology and diabetes, and every area of people that I talk to, there's exciting things happening, and a version of this question comes up often, that we want to make sure that we are moving the overall ball forward, not getting in each other's way, and that's of course the principle. What that means in practice is constant communication and coordination and respectful playing on the overall team. And we want to make sure that we are in close touch with all of these kinds of initiatives so that we can make sure that the work that ARPA-H is truly additive. I do see one other question in the Q&A, so if I can take the liberty of asking and answering it, maybe I'll do that. How the funding amount that will be awarded how will the funding amount that will be awarded by ARPA-H compare to the current funding amounts awarded by NIH across the country? So as I mentioned, I'm still learning the things I know about the way that health works and research works, but I'm still learning about the ARPA model. And when the drafts for the BAA were circulated around, I did wonder, I was sort of looking for here's the funding range number. And what I was told is that those are deliberately not specified because the goal is to encourage people to think flexibly about the real funding need that their proposal, their idea has. ARPA-H as a whole has been appropriated cumulatively $2.5 billion. So that is the cumulative appropriation. There are additional funds requested in the president's budget. So the amounts to be invested are sizable. How those will be allocated and what the amounts of individual awards will be or individual contracts will be, that will really depend on the ideas that come in and on the programs that take shape.
Thank you, David. We have a lot of people on the Zoom today who are rooting for you to succeed, and we're wondering how the ABC can best help position ARPA-H for success in terms of getting the word out, in terms of educating our legislators, in terms of engaging patients in the process to improve it and move it forward.
So I want to answer that question. There are also some that have just come in, which is great.
Please, by all means.
We look for, part of my job is to be one of the people who does outreach to the community. And I think that, it's funny, we're talking about technology and living at the absolute edge of breakthroughs. And I think all of those are crucial. It's crucial in communication, in science, in medicine. But I also think there's a value in just talking with people. And this is why I like these kinds of meetings. I like in-person meetings. I would like to see us have a regular cadence of interactions between the community and ARPA-H. What that exactly looks like, we still need to kind of work through. But I think some of it may depend on, where the initial programs take shape. Could we have, some regular touch point where we continue to have discussions and updates and inputs from the community? That's certainly something that I would like to explore, but I don't know quite where that will all go. I do think that organizations such as ABC that bring together a broad set of people interested in a particular range of things is incredibly valuable, certainly personally valuable for me. And I hope for you, where you can get kind of in one fell swoop an overview of ARPA-H, and we can get the value of comments and perspectives from a variety of viewpoints. Speaking of which, we have a question coming in about what do program managers, have to look like. The answer, this is one of the few questions that I can give a yes/no answer to. Do program managers have to have a science background or a PhD, major in a science field, work in a lab, or can it be someone that works with science but isn't a scientist? The answer is the program managers do not have to have a PhD. I think ARPA will benefit from having people, as I mentioned, we had a proposal come in that was essentially, and this happened to be from an MD, but that was a funding and finance and kind of somewhat of a behavioral science one, which I think will be really interesting. And that proposer need not be have an advanced degree. I think it will be beneficial to get proposals from nurses, from non-MDs, from non-PhDs, as well as, we would, obviously expect researchers and developers to have a lot of proposals and apply to be program managers. But I personally, I would love it if there's some really creative computer scientist or someone working on natural language processing who looks at ARPA-H and says, you know what, the stuff that I do is really applicable to giving physicians greater knowledge management tools to manage rare disease, manage and recognize rare disease better. That would be wonderful. What if we could give physicians, more instant and more complete knowledge of all of the kinds of, and I know there are, efforts along these lines already, but what if we could decrease the diagnostic odyssey of people with rare diseases? What if we could reduce, misdiagnosis? That would be great. What if we could facilitate scientific inquiry by some knowledge management system? All of these are sorts of things I think could be really exciting, and they may not come from science PhDs. How does prior evidence research play into project proposals? It sounds like the concepts could be very promising, but still speculative. That's a really good question. I think of it as a Venn diagram of the exploratory and then the realistic, and there's an overlap. ARPA-H is, I've trained myself not to say what ARPA-H will or will not do. I will because what I do say is what I'd be surprised about and what I wouldn't be surprised about. I think I would be surprised if ARPA-H did things that were so. In fact, I would strongly expect ARPA not to do things that are 80% likely to work, 90% likely to work. Those kinds of percentages are really important because they advance the knowledge base in ways that are likely to provide success. I would, the projects that ARPA-H is likely to pursue are going to be still feasible and still based on scientific evidence. There's got to be an evidence base that leads you to believe that it's at least possible, but it's deliberately designed to be more risk-taking. And what that precise percentage is, I don't know. But the goal is to really take a risk, but not to take something that is a completely infeasible risk. And those, one of the reasons that we have a different mechanism, sort of devolving a lot of authority and a lot of autonomy to the program manager, is that ARPA-H projects are not going to be reviewed by study sections. They're not going to be kind of consensus driven. They are going to empower a program manager to take a leap towards something that is based on their sense of where the opportunity arises. And that's deliberately a bit more risk-taking than other mechanisms. And that's why we're so excited and so enthusiastic about getting good program managers, because a lot will depend on their judgment and their skill.
And having said that, it's interesting to note that most of the people, or so many of us, are trained to avoid risk. And so finding those people who are interested in taking risks and interested in being very open-minded is going to be a challenge, I imagine.
Yes, and that's why we're making this very deliberate plea to kind of shake the cupboards for really good program managers, because we want to find those people who can take intelligent risks and can see a path forward where maybe others might not, and be right. And not all of them are going to be right, and they're not going to be right all the time. But that's why it's really exciting, and that's why in the program manager slide there were lots of different archetypes of a program manager. It could be someone who is relatively early in their career, who is kind of really got enthusiastic about, hey, there's this problem. I'd love to have spinal cords regrow. Like, how do we? Here's this really amazing thing that I've thought of that no one else seems to be pursuing because it's too risky of a way to not risky to the patients, but risky intellectually to try and do that. Or it could be someone at the end of their career, toward the end of their career, says, you know what, I've done really important science and good science, but before I hang it up, I'm going to take a flyer on this thing that's always been kind of bubbling away, and maybe we should just try and do this. So I'm really, what I will say, I don't know who all the program managers will be. What I will say is that going to the job talks of the ones who've come in already has been a real highlight. And they're really smart people, and they're really interesting ideas. And I come away thinking, gee, I don't know if that's going to work, but it might. And if it did, it would be really cool. And there are a lot of time. I mean, I haven't been regularly to research presentations in a while, and they're all really good. But I think the element that has been unique about the ARPA-H job talks is how much of a leap they would be if successful. I think we have another question coming in.
Yes, the question is, can a pre-revenue for-profit company apply to be a program? We have an idea and some pilots completed. Is this for ARPA-H or strictly an SBIR? I guess they're trying to distinguish between SBIR, STTR, and ARPA-H mechanisms.
Yeah, so they're distinct. The ARPA-H mechanisms will be as part of a program. So a program manager will be managing the program, but within that framework, yes. If you have a good idea, please go over to the BAA and have a look at that. There will be program announcements as well. So this is the initial broad BAA. And then as programs get moving, as I mentioned, in some of the slides, a program manager will design a program and try and build a performer team around that program. There will then, I would assume, be calls for much more specific attributes and qualities and capabilities that the program manager will want as part of that team. But yes,
will the program managers be based at all three sites?
So my understanding is that program managers will spend time at the sites, but need not physically be in that office all the time. Like so many of us are dealing with situations where we're sort of based somewhere, but we're actually in a variety of places. And I think that the crucial thing for the program managers will be to be hands-on with the performers, managing that, sculpting that with potential performers, getting out and making sure that the things that they're developing through the program are moving forward and then can graduate out into the wild.
Thank you, David. It sounds like you're accumulating some experience rapidly over the past, you've only been there months, but
Right.
And ARPA-H only for a year, but are you developing a list of FAQs? And at this point, do you have examples of successful applications as kind of a model or template for others to sort of think about and potentially emulate?
We don't have that yet. I think as more program managers get hired, it will be, I look forward to giving a version of this talk where the last 5 or 6 slides are, and here are some examples of the things that our programs have already been doing. But, obviously with things really standing up, being a relatively new agency, we're looking forward to programs. I think I have a sense of what some of them are likely to be, and they're pretty exciting. But nothing in terms of successful applications yet. And then all the BAA stuff is still incoming. So those are still in process.
When do you expect that projects will start being funded?
Programs
will be funded to fund those projects.
I think quite soon. What the exact metric definition of quite soon is, I don't know.
So getting the word out and communication are central to, I think, moving forward and advancing ARPA-H. And I'm wondering if you envision something like an annual summit where potential investigators, applicants, even program officers, potential project officers might convene, share ideas, learn together, maybe in DC in October, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it will be helpful because the health ecosystem is so complex. I know defense and energy are very, very complicated areas, but there are so many players in the health ecosystem that I think one thing that we should explore is the best way to intersect with that ecosystem, whether it's one big meeting or whether it's a series of meetings with, program managers in particular areas. I don't quite know, but I do think it's a really, really good suggestion, and it's one that we can discuss in-house. But we're kind of working this out as we go. But I do think that there's a value in that, and I know that Renee and Susan, the director and the deputy director, have also been speaking at events, and we're convening these meetings with prospective applicants or applicants and prospective applicants for the BAA, as well as people interested in the site selection process. So that's another mechanism to kind of get the word out.
Well, we would certainly like to help you get the word out to the biomedical community and neurosciences. And I think that's
right,
that ABC is ideally positioned toward, given how we're comprised. And I wonder if Katie, you want to just mention anything about that? Katie Sale?
Oh, sorry. Was just trying to find my unmute
We hear you.
button.
Yep.
Yes, just that, of course we are. And I could see us helping you facilitate something like this, especially for the brain community, as you take this further and as you have some proposals and programs within, sort of the brain realm that we'd be happy to share, disseminate, look for different patient advocacy representatives to be involved, all of that.
Well, that would be wonderful. As I said, when we had our smaller meeting, my goal is to have this be part of an ongoing dialogue rather than presentation. And everything that you've just said, I think is a wonderful part of that. And we can work together and figure out what makes the most sense going forward. But I love the idea of ongoing dialogue. I love the idea of being reunited with old friends and making new ones. So this is all wonderful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bowen. It looks like we've, at this point, answered all the questions from the audience. This was a very exciting and a thoughtful overview of ARPA-H. People haven't heard so much about it until now. And again, we're really interested in and hoping to engage the brain community much better with you. I want to remind everybody online that this webinar is being recorded and that it should be available for all to revisit all the pearls that you heard from Dr. Bowen today within a few weeks. I don't know if the slides are going to be available, but maybe they will be. Anyway, you can share this information with your colleagues. And I want to say thank you to everybody, especially to ARPA-H, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very, very much. And yeah, I think the little legend on the slide said distribution unlimited. So I will take them at their word, and I'll send a copy to Katie to get round.
And thank you so
everyone.
much for doing this, David. I think that
it's
we
a pleasure.
learned a lot, and we'll continue learning, hopefully.
Wonderful. Look forward to seeing much more of you and ABC. So thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.